Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 602. That can't be right. 605 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crime Media Network. 100% Canadian, as always. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, A. And with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.com. Today, recording day, is Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. Looks like the sun is trying here at the Beaver Lodge today. Hopefully, we'll get a little bit of warmth, and we'll have a beautiful day. We have
15 in the nation's capital today.
Yeah, exactly. No huge major breaking news story today, so which is cool because we'll get to be able to get caught up on a few other things along the way. And of course, Mark Carney made a lot of news. But before we do that, Mr. Grizzly, how is your mental health today, sir?
I think it's okay for the first time in a while. I went to bed at a decent hour. I got a good night's sleep. Woke up a few times in the middle of the night, as I always do. Disturbing, vivid dreams. That's the side effect of sertraline. But yeah, functioning. So I think I'll be okay. I'm just going to need a lot of coffee today. Got a lot to do.
Okay. Doing okay myself. Played curling last night. It was the last match of the regular season for my Tuesday night competitive team, and it was a really weird match. I got cramps in my pushing leg, so I pushed out for a takeout yesterday, and my leg completely seized up. I managed to hold my position for the extra 2 seconds I needed through excruciating pain, and made sure that I got the rock off. I actually made the shot, but then I crumbled. And was able to work it out a little bit during the match. We ended up winning it. We had no business winning it. I mean, cramps, spills, just we had certain ends where after like 2 of us threw rocks the first 4 stones, we had nothing in play. Well, they had 4 or 5 in the house. We still managed to squeak it out somehow. I have no idea how. But we had a perfect round. We didn't lose a match this entire round. So we're going into playoffs with a little bit of confidence. But when the match was over, however, that's when things really got bad because we went to the locker room. And even though I had drank a lot of water during the match to try and get the cramps to unseize, when I got to the locker room, my baby toe on the other leg cramped. And then it went up to my calf. and then it went up to my hip. And I was on the floor and I could not move until a couple people came and actually like pulled the muscles apart. So yeah, really weird experience actually, because when your body starts to cramp and seize, and it's sort of like you're trying to work it out, then something else seizes, and then you can't move that one, then something. I figured, it's like, okay, we were in my hips. If it went up to my rib cage and then up to the sort of like right under the armpit and then into the shoulder, I literally would have been frozen on the floor and nobody would have been able to get me up. So I was a little panicked there for a second yesterday as the cramping just kept on going throughout my body. But
Hydration.
yeah, well, but that was the thing I couldn't understand because yesterday afternoon, uh, I had the opportunity to go see a movie that I wanted to go see. Canadian movie actually called Seven Veils. If you have the chance to go see it, go. Very
What's
good.
it
It's
about?
Adam. Well, it's a Adam Egoyan movie.
Okay.
Who's a famous Canadian director, has been nominated for Oscars. If you follow movies a bit, he directed Exotica and The Sweet Hereafter.
Mhm.
That's the one that you probably would most know. Well, a couple of years ago, the Canadian Opera Company had hired him to direct an opera of Salome. And well, it seems that Adam Egoyan, ever the overachiever, decided not only to direct the opera, but make a movie of someone who was directing the opera, but not him.
Okay.
And used people that were in the opera in the movie, like this, as well as Amanda Seyfried, who he's worked with before. Amanda Seyfried, you might remember her from Mamma Mia, played the daughter,
Amongst other things. She's
amongst
quite a
other
few
things. Oh yeah,
films over the years.
she's absolutely, she's a very, very good actress. But I mean, that's
She also played the part of Elizabeth, the billionaire blood sample thing. She got sent to prison. Elizabeth Olsen, I think, was her name.
Okay, yeah,
Sent to prison
yeah.
for fraud. Yeah,
Yeah.
That was Amanda Seyfried who played that part as well.
Yeah. So amazing actress. Great movie, really good. Moody, as all of Adam Egoyan films are. Movie,
They always are, yeah.
yeah, with a sort of like there's always like a going on somewhere because there's some tensions, and I liked it because it's there's a lot of people wearing a lot of masks in this movie, and you see that the acting is so good that every now and then, like as the camera's still on them, you see like the facial expression change a little bit.
Mhm.
And it's like you're like, oh, they know more than they think. Oh, there's something more going on there. Ooh. So it's very moody. For those who want to go see it, there some of the subject matter does deal with childhood trauma based on things that should not be happening between a father and a daughter.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. But there is nothing graphic in the movie about that. It's just that that's gone on.
It's going to happen, yeah.
Well, not that what's going to happen. It's happened already. So
So it's just an illusion, or?
Yeah, they allude to it a lot. They talk to it a lot. There are scenes from the past that are not overtly sexual in any way. But then there's a line in the play is that he looks at her too much.
Mhm.
And bad things can happen. So there's a lot of looking at her too much, that type of thing. So that's about as bad as it gets in terms for the visually. So for people who want to see it, but it's an undercurrent the entire time. However, there is if you understand the story of Salome, there is a certain satisfying ending. It's symbolic, but it's very satisfying.
Honestly, don't know a thing about it. So.
Oh, about Salome?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the name, but I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Well, if you remember the Bible, Salome was I think the daughter of Herod, who was in love with John the Baptist, and thought he was so beautiful. And he would not look at her at all because she was the daughter of a whore. So she did a dance of the seven veils for her father and a whole bunch of people. And he had promised to give her anything that she wanted. And she asked for the head of John the Baptist on a silver platter. so she
Yes.
could finally kiss his lips.
Kind of strange, don't you think?
Yeah. So yeah. So it's in so and there's not too much opera. There are scenes and stuff like that, so there is some stuff, but they don't hide anything, right? It is the Canadian Opera Company. You see signs, whatnot. So
Mhm.
Canada is Canada and whatnot, and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of nice. And I've actually been in the theater at the Canadian Opera Company. It's gorgeous, by the way. If you've never been, gorgeous. It's all
Never been.
wood, and the building is fantastic. The theater's amazing. I mean, and I don't know much about opera. I've only seen two in my entire life because my beaver sweetie loves them. But both of them that he took me to are at the Canadian Opera Company. It is an amazing place to
I've
go
been to a
watch
few,
something.
and I'm not going to lie, I've fallen asleep at all of them.
Yeah, you have to pick a good one at first. I think the first one we saw was Fall Stuff, I think, which was a lot of fun because that's it's a pretty good comedy, and there's some body humor in it, so it's a good entry level one. My beaver sweetie picked well. But yeah, if you have it probably won't be in theaters too long because Canadian films, they come and go pretty quickly. But if you have the opportunity or to pick it up, I think it'll be on Crave because I think Crave was the co-sponsor of that one. I saw in the credits. Do take the time to see it. It is very well written. It is extremely well acted, especially if you like subtle
Hmm.
face movements and stuff like that, and just like somebody's like talking, then all of a sudden stopping and the eyes sort of moving or something, and you're reading that, and it's a good day. It's slower moving,
Hmm.
right? It's not like there's 75 action scenes or whatnot. Again, like an Adam McGoyan movie, but it's good. It's really good.
I, I've seen a lot of his films. I think he's a very good filmmaker. Um, I've seen a
But it's a
great
mood,
many
right? It's a
times.
vibe always.
I
Yeah.
get a sense of pomposity from his films.
Some do, yeah.
I often, and maybe this is the blue collar in me coming out, but I often feel like his films are speaking down to the audience. Maybe I'm completely wrong,
Mm,
but it's a vibe I've had from his films for a long time. Or maybe it's just that's how I've seen him in interviews. He feels that most of the audience members are beneath him. I don't know the man. I've never met
mm,
him. It's a vibe I've gotten from his films for a long time. I think he's a very talented individual. I think his films are very well made.
mm.
I just I get rubbed the wrong way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
that's
some of them,
in an inadequacy in me. I don't know.
yeah, but some of them are like I I didn't really get Exotica.
Mhm.
Like when I saw it, The Sweet Hereafter, though I did. Like
Yeah,
that was like pretty direct. I didn't get to see Ararat, I
Sarah
believe.
Polley was in The Sweet Hereafter, wasn't she?
Yeah,
Along with
and again,
Gordon
she's
Pinsent.
brilliant, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and she's a brilliant actress too, right?
yeah.
So, but this one was pretty straightforward, direct. I got it, but there is a mood, yeah, as in all Adam and Goyan movies. But yeah, like I said, this one was a little more straightforward. But I could see, given that the subject is opera, and then there's a lot of discussions about Seafried, who's the director of the opera, she's been chosen to mount it, and it's a remount that they're doing.
Mm.
Um, there's lots of talk about like what's the impulse for the actor and what they're doing and why and what story is going on and stuff like that. And it is up there. It is cerebral in
Mhm.
that sense. So yeah, I mean, you're talking opera, right? And acting and connecting with feelings and emotions and translating and all that kind of stuff. I mean, even me as an actor, I've never been in a role. Now, of course, I've never been in a role that's so high stakes as an opera. Lots of money goes into that. But uh, I've never had a director like come up and say like, no, this is a scene and this is the driving motivation. She's like this, and you have to understand that this is there like this. There's all this stuff going on, so I need this, right, from you like this. So you can. The reason why her performance is so good is because she is so invested in sending a message
Mhm.
through the production. Um, she some people might think that she's a little too passionate about it, right?
Mm.
She can rub people the wrong way a little bit, or seem distracted, or not fully present, and there are people that react to her in subtle ways, again, that way.
Right.
But it's for anybody who was really marked by the Me Too movement.
Mhm.
There's a lot in here also political, and about how some of the people you would least expect to want to keep things quiet do, and what other people are prepared to do once they know something has happened. And are their decisions entirely ethical or not? So that's what I mean. There's a lot going on, which makes the movie very interesting. Let's say if you watch it, there's a lot to talk about after,
Mm.
which is fun if you're the type of person that likes to go
I
watch a movie and then talk about it with friends
won't be
after.
going to the cinema to see it. I'll be honest with you. Well, I mean, when I go to the cinema, I want to have a big
Yeah.
cinema experience with the sound, and
Sound and
because that's my living, right?
Yeah.
So for a film like that, I'll just stay home and watch that on television
Yeah.
at some point in time
Yeah.
on a streaming service. But and it's not discounting or taking away from the film. It's just that it's not a big screen experience for me.
Mhm. Yeah. The popcorn movies, the blockbusters, animated films, that type
Yeah,
of
I
stuff,
want to see
special
that
effects
in a big.
bonanzas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I can
And
understand.
then there's
Like I
other
said,
things. I like we did go to see the A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan film recently. We
I
saw
did. I
that in the
missed that one
cinema.
yet.
We went to see that in the cinema, and it was quite enjoyable. It was a very, very good film. Timothy Chalamet is a brilliant actor, brilliant young actor. He becomes Bob Dylan in the film. The thing is I rarely go to see an art house film at the cinema.
Mhm.
Very rare. Just every now and then I might go see something specifically playing at the Mayfair because it's not available anywhere else, or the
Yes.
Bytown, right?
Yes.
It's those two places are where you see certain films that the major chains won't pick up, and
Right.
you're not going to find on a streaming service for, well, maybe ever.
Sometimes, yeah, exactly.
Not
Yeah.
everything is available. Most are, but not everything. But yeah, that's me. I'm going to grab another coffee. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing over here in Kingston. We have a repertory cinema called the Screening Room that has 3 screens, and that's where we went to. So that's why I had to go, because I think it was playing only 4 times, and then it might be gone. So yeah, sometimes you have to get out and see them quickly when you have a repertory cinema, especially if you're in a smaller town. But yeah, just a little movie recommendation if you're looking for something to if you like something that challenges you a little bit, not too much. You're not brusqued in this in any way, but gives you this like, oh my god, that's really interesting. I wonder what those types of discussions. Like I said, I thought it was very, very, very well done. All right, kids and cubs. Today, let's see. Well, Mark Carney is back in Canada after his time in Europe. And yesterday we showed you a little bit, and today we'll have a little more about the press conference he had when he was there, because there were some very interesting answers to a few questions. And Mark Carney, I think this is a thing with him, subtly, very subtly, well, not subtly in that sense that you had to look for meaning, but said some things in the answers uh, that turned out being news. And these are things that are often like some of the things he said are things that could be, you could hold an actual press conference to say just that one thing, and he just like casually slides one or two in an answer like that. So I have to say, I know it's only been a few days, and I know that there's people that are taking an entirely different interpretation of the um, confrontation. I don't want to call it confrontation. The exchange with Rosie Barton.
Mm.
Because some people are, it's too prickly. You got to do better than that. You got to be able to take these questions. And listen, I understand as well. There is an element of truth that in politics you're going to get questions that you find insulting, beneath you, demeaning, I guess, and you got to handle them and you got to roll with them. It's part of the territory. But there is something objectively different about this type of question. It's one of those, like, when did you stop beating your wife type questions,
Yeah.
right?
It's greasy.
It's like, come on. It's like, you're a banker. You made a lot of money. Come on. You really expect us to believe that you don't have a conflict of some kind somehow? Come on, please. Right? You got to be corrupt. Come on, you're a banker. Come on. Right? I mean, that's the starting point. If we're starting there, that's not good for society in any way. And if we're starting there with anyone, I mean, when you don't know, here's the thing: is that people are making this argument, right? That Mark Carney, well, he might be the richest prime minister that we've ever had. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. Maybe. I mean, he's a banker. You would assume that he invested his money well, and so But he also is the most vetted prime minister we've ever had, either, too.
Yeah,
And
that's
not
true.
vetted by the Bank of Canada and then vetted to become the governor of the Bank of England, for which he probably had to apply for citizenship, so another vetting. He's had Five Eyes security clearance. He's been vetted there too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not, and in all that time, there's nothing. I mean, if there was something in his past from the time he was the governor of Bank of Canada before, he never would have gotten the citizenship, never would have got the governorship of the Bank of England. And if there was something really bad that happened when he was the governor of the Bank of England, he probably wouldn't have been named the UN Special Envoy on Climate Change and Finance. Yeah, like, there would have to have been something, anything, anywhere in the public domain throughout his entire career to hang your hat on. Say, I find that hard to believe. Now, if she was doing a press conference with Doug Ford where he told us that, yeah, no, I did really whip up that Starlink deal, and then she said, yeah, you ripped up the Starlink, I find that hard to believe. Yeah, we would have a basis for that, right? Greenbelt, I won't touch it. Then he touched it, and I said I wouldn't touch it. And Starlink, I said I ripped it up, but then he pulled back, so I put it back in. Like I said, I'm still want Elon to do business with him. And so, like, there you have a legitimate one. He's gone back and forth. But that I know of, there is nothing. And trust me, if there were something, conservative opposition research would have found it by now, and it would be all over. All they've got so far is that a tiny, tiny portion of a company relocated to the United States in order to get on the U.S. stock market exchange, because it was a legal requirement. Which normally in Canada, when that happens, we celebrate because, hey, Canadian company made good. But a Liberal did it, so it's bad. Right?
Well,
conservatives are against Canadian businesses expanding and taking on the world if a Liberal made the decision
I think
on behalf of the business.
I think it's interesting that they want to go after him for things like, well, he has no experience as a politician. Okay. But he has a lot of diplomacy. He's dealt with the heads of nation states for decades. And he's not having any of Poilievre's shit. He's not putting up with any, as evidenced by this.
Thank you. That's where I'm going.
He got, as being a politician, he was a political staffer. He got elected to the House of Commons very early on, his low 20s. Said he was only going to serve 2 terms. He's ended up serving, I think he's probably into his 5th. He's got the biggest pension, publicly paid pension of anyone. And he's that lifelong politician that, you can only believe so much in the free market if you're a tenured professor at Chicago or you're a lifelong politician, right? And he just sort of worships in that world. He defaults to the same solutions all the time. And he's also, I honestly believe he disdains much about the country, much of what I just described, which to me, and I think to Canadians, is the nature of the country. He disdains. So he's been on this mantra for the last several years: Canada's broken, Canada's broken, and Canada's broken because we're stupid. Okay, Canada's broken because we're stupid. And you know, he finds an echo chamber with Jordan Peterson and other people who he sits down and talks with. So there's a disdain for the country that he envisions. It's pretty awkward for him now that the country's coming together and it's Canadian pride, and we're under attack by the very people that he's been cozying up to. So literally, as we speak, he's trying to find a Canadian flag to wrap himself in and play patriot. Last refuge of his.
Mhm. And as you can tell by every time Pierre holds an event, by the awesome and impressive and extremely intimidating display of flags.
Hmm.
If you look at the press conference that Mr. Carney had in Europe, there are 6 flags.
Yeah.
4 behind him, 1 over here, and 1 over here. No big flag that takes up the entire camera shot behind him. Not a row of 2 rows of like 16 flags, you know, that he walks through.
Well, I just thought what he, you know, the way he just addressed Polyev in that particular interview was the fact that the gloves are off. He doesn't give a shit.
Oh, no,
He doesn't care.
Pierre does not intimidate him. Mark Carney has dealt with autocrats.
Yeah. So you think a little pipsqueak from Calgary is going to trouble him? No.
He's dealt with the most powerful people in the world because he is not a politician, but a lot of his career has been in the political world.
Correct. No,
Right.
and again, jury's still out, and I
Oh, yeah.
have not formed a full opinion on what he will be like as prime minister because he's only been in the job for like what, 5 days?
We're all dealing in first impressions and reputation.
Right.
Right.
I think him coming out and publicly defending himself against Rosie Barton's bizarre accusation, because it wasn't a question as much as it was an accusation that she called him
Yes.
basically a liar.
Yes.
I think him defending himself is something we need to see a little bit more of, to be honest with you. He's done everything that has been asked of him, and he did it ahead of schedule.
Yep.
So, you know, a lot of this dirt that's coming up, it's Russian bot farms. All of these AI images of him with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, all AI.
Yep.
And it's Russian bot farms and paid trolls that are doing this.
Yep.
Canadian Center for Cybersecurity said, no, they're actively trying to disrupt our democracy. They were already successful in the United States of America, so why not take on Canada? Then they can just take over all of the Western Hemisphere. Because if they get Canada and the U.S., how soon before Mexico and then Central and South America fall? Putin just wants the whole world to himself. And he's actively doing it.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
didn't Trump just say he wants to start trading more with Russia?
Yep.
Excuse me, what?
Yeah. He had this other interview and
Fox.
but I got like Russia and China and North Korea and like and they're friends and they're respecting. It's like you got the wrong friends, buddy.
He wants to trade more with Russia. He wants to trade with despots and autocrats and dictators. He doesn't want to work with actual friends and allies. That should be all you need to know.
Yes. You should not be proud of having the respect of these people. But the other thing he said is like, Canada, we're the nastiest when it comes to negotiate. We're the nastiest negotiators. So in other words, we're the best negotiators in the world. The ones who frustrate you the most because we actually are consequential and we follow process and we like having things down on paper.
Well, I mean, Canada doesn't pay for military. They give us nothing and they're the worst people to negotiate with of everybody. They cheat.
Again, projection. Dude, you're on your 3rd wife.
Yeah.
All right. and she won't let you hold her hand in public.
I've heard him
Okay.
describe her as I'm not joking. I've heard him describe her as my current wife,
Yes.
which means she's temporary.
Yes.
Although he is 78, so
Mhm. So yes, here, I think it was March 6th, I believe, according to CTV here. Canadians should expect AI-enabled foreign meddling in election, says the Cybersecurity Center. The Federal Cybersecurity Center says China, Russia, and Iran are very likely to use tools enabled by artificial intelligence in attempts to meddle in the coming general election campaign. In a new report, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity also says cybercriminals are likely to take advantage of election-related opportunities in Canada to perpetrate scams. The center says that despite these threats, it's very unlikely that AI-enabled activities will fundamentally undermine the integrity of the general election. An election is widely expected in the coming weeks after the Liberals choose a new leader to succeed Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The Federal Center says hostile foreign actors are using artificial intelligence to flood cyberspace with false information and are using botnets to spread disinformation. It warns that AI is also being used to create deep-fake pornography, targeting politicians and public figures, predominantly women and gender-diverse people. Because, of course,
yes.
they cannot stop thinking about what it is rainbow people have between their legs.
It's very bizarre.
Anyway, I know. I
Well, as
keep
soon
on
as
saying,
it's-
I've said it before on the show and I'll say it again. I am a gay man.
Mm.
I like the penis for all intents and purposes. Because I think about it enough.
Canada coming in hot on the
I
internet.
love my
Yeah.
beaver sweetie, but these people think about penis, particularly gay penis, way more often than I do. There's something wrong with these people.
Well, yeah. I saw some of the commentary yesterday on. I went to the Juno site and read some of the commentary on that
Poor
story.
You.
Wow.
Oh.
These people have an obsession with the genitalia of others. It is bizarre behavior. Bizarre. I'm like, I don't know how many of them are real people. I don't know how many of them are bots. I don't know how many of them are trolls. I don't know how many of them need severe mental health assistance. Why are you so concerned with the genitalia of other people? I thought you were the live and let live people. I thought it's the government, but you're obsessed with the genitalia of others. It's truly bizarre.
The evangenitals.
Yeah, it's a good term.
Jeez.
It's truly bizarre.
It is disconcertingly bizarre. It's not normal.
No,
it's
just
not normal. Nymphomaniacs think about the D less often than these people do. Now, when Mark Carney, that video that Mr. Grizzly showed you, and I'm glad you did that because I had it on my list too. Mark Carney, if you're worried about him, he just goes for the jugular there. And for those who said, when he mentioned, it's only people that believe in Chicago or that have been lifelong politicians, by Chicago in that he means the Chicago School of Economics.
Right.
Which is, according here, it's the Chicago School of Economics is particularly famous for the fact that it has an emphasis on economic thought. It was developed in the 1940s and 50s that has a founded on the neoclassical price theory and the belief that free markets are more efficient than government regulation. So that's like the ground zero. If you're going to have that thing, just leave everything to the free market. If that's your thing, you go to the Chicago School of Economics. That's where the seed of that was planted. So, and it's developed. So that's why I said it seems that within, I'm guessing from Mark Carney, that within the economics and banking community, while the Chicago School of Economics is still very, very famous, there's a little bit of, oh, you're one of those people, eh? So, yeah. Now, um, Mr. Carney is back home, and apparently, those who are organizing his schedule have done another pretty darn nifty move, because it seems that it has been announced, and I believe it was Doug Ford himself who announced it, after making a really stupid thing, saying something stupid like he thinks that Trump's talk about Canada being 51st state is such a compliment.
No,
No,
it's
it's
not.
not a compliment. It's not a compliment. And let's not take that, because there's nothing more that encourages this guy than thinking that you think that he's flattering you.
Yeah, that's exactly what Trump wants to hear. That's music.
That's just going to invite more of that.
Yeah.
Why couldn't this is why they kept Doug Ford hidden in the basement during the damn election campaign again, because they didn't want him to fuck up like that during the campaign. Why couldn't he have fucked up like that during the election campaign? Anyway, I digress. So, Carney was in Europe, and well, dropped a little bit of news here. Mr. Grizzly, I'm going to send you the thing again. Hopefully this is the... No, actually I don't want to send you that one.
Okay.
Because there's I'm talking to myself here. I'm sorry. There are two feeds that I have for it, and one of them unfortunately sounds very echoey. And I don't want to use that one, because I have a feeling that on the podcast version of it, that would not sound great at all in your ears. So I found the right one. Here we go. And I will send it to you. And this here is very, like I said, very interesting, because Mr. Carney it's very clear that he is not bombastic.
No, he's quite far from that, actually.
Yeah.
I'd say
But he's firm.
anti-bombastic.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just
Yeah.
he's laid back, he's chill, he's relaxed, he's firm, as evidenced by his response to Rosie Barton's accusation of him lying.
Yep. And it wasn't like Rosie. It was like, Rosie,
look in your heart.
I think you need to look in your heart, right? So it's like, he's got, like I said, these testimonies that we keep on hearing from people. He's extremely demanding, but he's extremely fair. He always comes prepared, so he's expecting everybody to be as prepared as he is. If he's asking you a question and your answer is not substantive, he will not be happy. And not happy as in he'll throw ketchup against the wall. It's just he'll go back and do better. Come back with a better answer. It seems that there are plenty of people out there that are willing to say that they've really enjoyed working with him and found him to be quite spectacular in his roles. Again, extremely tough, extremely fair, but extremely tough and extremely demanding, but extremely fair and extremely caring seems to be the overall consensus. So here, Mr. Grizzly, if you would go to around 534. Look at the flags. See, there's just 4 behind him, one all the way to the right, one all the way to the left, compared to what you've seen in the Pierre Poilievre press conferences.
Pierre's trying to dress it up like he's General George S. Patton.
Well, when he says if he's looking for a flag to wrap himself into, there you go. Eh?
All right, let's go.
Next question. Welcome back, Lise Doucette of
Come
the BC.
Come home.
Canadian,
yes.
Brunswicker. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. You came on this first foreign trip making it clear that you needed public support for Canada as it faces not just a trade war. You say you were enthusiastic. Enthusiastic. That was your word today. Enthusiastic support as Canada faces not just a trade war, but threats to its sovereignty. You didn't get that in London. You didn't even get a press conference next to Sir Keir Starmer. Do you regret that? And if you can't take that back to Canada, tell us what is the top thing you achieved in the last 24 hours that you can go back to Canada and that you can say they have our back.
That sounds like an angry line of questioning.
No, actually, this was there's a little history here. Lise Doucette is a Canadian. The first questions were asked by the international press pool.
Okay.
And then the rest is reserved for the Canadian press pool. So she's a Canadian that's working in England, who he's obviously had many questions with before while he was the governor of Bank of England. That's why I say, like, come home.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Great to see you, Lise. I'll say a couple of things. As I said when I was sworn in, which was just Friday, so you don't have to go far back in the BBC archives to find the clip. As I said then, we don't need another country to validate our sovereignty. We are sovereign. We don't need praise from another country. We are proud in and of ourselves. I would point out that the Prime Minister made a point of referring to our sovereignty, made a point of referring to our shared sovereign in King Charles III. So if you're looking for some evidence to your question, you have both my statement of Friday and you have that of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Look, this 36 hours, and that is what it is effectively, away from Canada, the focus is on security, deepening security partnerships with France, with the United Kingdom. Those discussions are necessarily sensitive. They're revealed in the full course of time. I'm encouraged by the progress that's been made. Secondly, advancing the support for Ukraine that's very necessary. You may have seen that I've invited President Zelensky to the G7. I look forward to hosting him in Canada in June. There are a host of other measures that we are taking as part of the coalition willing to support that. And it also includes economic opportunities with respect to, for example, artificial intelligence, critical minerals, broadening out existing trade relationships that are functioning quite well. And I mean both CETA with respect to the provisional arrangements around CETA with respect to the European Union, where our trade has grown by more than 60%, and similarly with the UK FTA. So we are taking back a lot, but we're also taking back a deepening of our core partnerships, which is the objective. And we're 2/3 of the way through. And if you'd like to come to Iqaluit, you will see more. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now begin the Canadian delegation portion. À la délégation canadienne, on va prendre une vingtaine de minutes de questions. C'est à vous.
Let's stop there.
Sorry, I was hitting the wrong button. I was trying to figure out why I didn't stop.
So, Mark Carney dropped a little news there. President Zelensky is invited to the G7.
Yes, in June.
That might be a good way to keep Trump away.
Well,
if he's allowed in the first place.
So, yeah, can he even cross the border?
Yes.
Look, they could make a special dispensation for the president of another nation, but technically speaking, as a convicted felon, he can't leave the country.
Nope. At least not to come here.
No. Well, any country can refuse him entrance for any reason, right? But because he is a convicted felon, they might go, yeah, I know he's the president, but, he has 34 felony counts and he's a rapist. We don't want him.
Yeah, not so much.
We'll do a Zoom call. Thank you.
Yeah, you can participate by Zoom. But would Trump want to be in another room with them publicly in Canada, the nation with the largest diaspora of Ukrainians outside Ukraine? Try to pull that shit here.
Yeah.
See what happens. So, a little bit of news. Now, that piece of news had all the Kirkland Lake Box Farms people online go crazy. It's like, caretaker mode. We're not supposed to do that. Like I said, okay. Number one, we're not in caretaker mode. We're not.
No.
Where Parliament is prorogued. We haven't closed a session of Parliament in order to head into an election. We are only in caretaker mode once a writ has been drawn, until the next government is sworn in. We are not in caretaker mode. Danielle Smith, when she was elected leader of the UCP, therefore taking over from Jason Kenney as a premier of Alberta, and didn't have a seat for how long? A while. The Alberta government was not in caretaker mode that entire time. So that's BS. But there's no caretaker mode. Mark Carney has full authority to invite anyone to G7. Number two, whether it was caretaker mode or not, there's nothing but caretaker mode that forbids you inviting dignitaries to a meeting. Right? Signing treaties, making big spending decisions, not who you're going to invite to a meeting. So again, these are all these wonderful patriots who claim they love Canada with all their heart, but never took it out for a coffee date and can't remember what color its eyes are. You don't love Canada. You don't know it. You don't know it. All right. We are not in caretaker mode. That is BS. Also, President Zelensky has pretty much been invited to every G7 meeting that has happened for the past little while. It's pretty much a standing invitation. This is not new, but he made news and then slid it in there. So that was an interesting part of the answer. Next, Mr. Grizzly, we will go to 851. This will have the question and the follow-up. I want you to pay attention to how he ends the answer right prior to the follow-up question being asked.
Brian Platt with Bloomberg. There's been a lot of talk on this trip about cooperation in general between Canada and the UK and Canada and France, but there's areas where that cooperation is not happening right now. With the UK, the trade talks, the free trade deal between the two countries, those talks are stalled. And the UK so far has chosen not to retaliate against Trump's tariffs, whereas Canada has retaliated. Did you bring up any specific ways, either on the restarting trade talks or on coordinating retaliation in your meetings today?
Well, look, we take our own decisions with respect to our bilateral trade relationships with the United States. We're not trying to organize a coordinated retaliation. Other countries will take those decisions. For example, what we can do are a series of measures, and there are limits ultimately to this, but there's a series of measures that have maximum impact on the United States and minimum impact on Canada. Those measures that we take might have a different impact on the UK, on France. So look, we don't look for that form of coordinated retaliation. That's not helpful necessarily to those countries, but it's not helpful to the overall process. What we're looking for with respect to the United States is to have a more comprehensive discussion of and negotiation of our overall commercial and security relationship. And when the United States is ready to have that conversation, we're more than ready to sit down.
Did you bring up the stalled trade talks in your meetings?
Look, we have a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom, which covers 99% of goods that are traded. We have a free trade agreement with the European Union, which covers 99% of the goods that are traded. There are issues with respect to agriculture. No, it wasn't my top priority today. My top priorities related to security, related to Ukraine, related to issues related that we will bring to the table in the G7, specifically in and around AI, critical metals and minerals, and the evolution of the commercial system. Thank you.
Okay, so let's stop there. I think that's very, very clear. Again, subtly stated, not aggressive, not bombastic. We want to have a discussion that is comprehensive about our trade and security. And when the United States is ready to have that discussion, we'll show up. In other words, no taki-taki. Until this discussion that I am proposing is the only discussion we are having. We are clear on this, right? All right. Very subtle, but firm.
Oh, he knows what he's doing.
And not ambiguous at all.
No.
Not wishy-washy. There's this one was in French, so I won't play it. But he was asked, your political opponents in Ottawa accuse you of having accomplished nothing tangible with this trip and holding a pre-electoral public relations operation. How do you respond? And he said, well, that's not true at all. My political opponents say many things every day that are not correct. We have had very important and very concrete discussions with the President of France, including discussions about the fundamental security of our countries, about cooperation in the manners in which we defend our countries, and about strengthening our partnership with both France and the United Kingdom, where artificial intelligence is concerned. I understand that it is difficult for the opposition to understand all of this because they constantly use three-word slogans, but this here is the real world and not the one that they fabricated. Ooh, damn.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shot across the bow. I believe we have
and especially stated on foreign soil. Boom.
Yeah, he's not going to pull his punches, and even though he has the ability to be a diplomat, there are times when he is going to go back to maybe his days of playing hockey. Hockey diplomacy. Where it's short, sweet, straight to the point, and the next one is a punch in the face, right?
No, fuck off.
Yeah.
As opposed, I do not think that would be in the best interests of both of our nations at the current time.
Effectively.
No, fuck off is the shorter version of that. If we
He's
go
too
to
polite to do that, though.
Yeah. If we go to 1331, Mr. Grizzly, asking a very interesting question, because again, this seems to be a theme that keeps on coming up. It's like, well, nobody's stood up and said, hey, you're supposed to get it. So again, they're still on this, right? Why aren't you able to get anybody to come to a microphone and say, hey? Apparently seems to be the test. Again, we're talking about diplomacy. That's probably not going to happen.
Prime Minister Michael Couture with CTV News. I take your point earlier on a number of our allies talking about our sovereignty today. But nobody's come out forcefully and said those comments about the 51st state are just not on. Do you think that our traditional allies are not sticking their necks out because they're concerned that if they say something that'll anger President Trump, that they'll be next?
I think I would take seriously what the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom said today. I don't think one needs to respond to every comment about another country. Look, we can stand up for ourselves. It's Canada strong. We can stand up for ourselves. We've called out those comments. They're disrespectful. They're not helpful, and they need to stop before. And
I don't know what just happened there.
Conversation about our broader partnership with the United States.
Something
But we're
wrong with
Canada.
the
We don't need other people to come to our aid. Come on. C'est pas nécessaire d'avoir d'autres pays nous aident. Nous sommes Canada, Canada fort. Okay.
All right. So that, I have to commend the journalist, is a great question. It's also a question that could trip someone up.
Oh, yes.
Do you think other countries are not saying anything because they fear they will be next? That is terrain that you have to tread very carefully on. He did a really good job there.
Well,
Kept it about us.
When you're the governor of the Bank of England and the governor of the Bank of Canada, I think you learn how to address questions such as that in a diplomatic yet polite and curt manner.
But I want you to imagine an alternative reality where Skippy has the same exact personality and ethics that he has now, but is somehow a liberal. How do you think he would have handled that question? Oh, these damn stupid countries. He would probably create an international incident. Like, Some of these questions seem really simple, but the answers are complicated and nuanced, and you have to be very careful because you cannot be speaking for other countries. All right. We'll go to 1505. This is the thing that we talked about yesterday, but we only had the part with Rosemary Barton. There's a part that started before with Stephanie Levitz. Normally, journalists ask questions that are very, very, very long.
Mm-hmm.
This one isn't, but listen to it and see how it lands for you.
Okay. And then I want to address Rosie on the other side of this.
Oh, yes.
Well,
the tweet?
Well, a couple of things here. I
Okay.
got something for you that I think you'll find interesting.
Okie dokie.
Mr. Carney, Stephanie Levitz, Globe and Mail. We understand that you have now placed your assets in a blind trust, so you
Yes.
don't know what's happening to them going forward, but you knew what they were going into that blind trust. So what are they?
Look, Stephanie, I follow the rules of the Ethics Commissioner. I'm following them well in advance of any of the requirements, as you know, because I know you know this. You know that these requirements come into effect in months. We're talking days after I became Prime Minister. So I'm complying with the rules of the Ethics Commissioner, going through the processes and all these things that are necessary. And I will remind you, and I'll remind Canadians again, that the Leader of the Opposition cannot find it. And look, you look at the questions this evening, you look at the nature of the discussions, look at the nature of discussions I had with the President of France, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The Leader of the Opposition would not be capable of having those discussions because the Leader of Opposition refuses to get his security clearance, something that it took me a few weeks to get. And he has been the Leader of the Opposition for 3 years. So I comply with my responsibilities, I comply with the rules well in advance, and the Leader of the Opposition doesn't take his responsibilities at a time of, well, you should take these responsibilities at any time, but it's particularly remarkable given the stakes in global geopolitics at the moment.
Yep.
The rules say that those assets should be publicly disclosed within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you
What
sought to
possible
avoid.
conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
Are you saying you are not open to any conflict of interest?
Yes.
Someone who spent most of his life in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. That's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will. I have served in the private sector. I have stood up for Canada. I have left my roles in the private sector at a time of crisis for our country. I'm complying with all the rules. Your line of questioning is trying to invent new rules. I'm complying with the rules that Parliament has laid out and the responsibilities of the Ethics Commissioner. And I will continue to comply with those rules.
Okay. So that's how it all went down.
Right.
Now, you had stuff in a private trust. What's in it? Excuse me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There is a process. The way the process works is that all MPs have to file stuff with the Ethics Commissioner. He's not an MP.
Correct. No.
He is the Prime Minister, though.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was the leader of the Liberal Party, and then he got sworn in. He's the Prime Minister. He filed everything with the Ethics Commissioner on the first possible day. Now, the Ethics Commissioner has work to do. But by filing it on the first day, rather than waiting until 11:59 and 59 seconds on the last possible day to file it, he has increased the odds that there could be some public information coming out during the election if the ethics commissioner works fast enough. The ethics commissioner looks at everything, then goes to the person in question, says, you're going to need some screens here, 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 and there. We're going to have to do this. They agree or don't agree. If they agree, they set up the screens. If they don't agree, right, they won't. And then the ethics commissioner, who is beyond reproach, the one that we have, stellar reputation, has worked in many places, dedicated career public servant. Nobody has a bad thing to say about him, because when he was appointed, the Conservatives were making some big stinks about the ethics commissioner, so they picked somebody who was completely crystal clear above board. The ethics commissioner then makes a report, and the ethics commissioner then makes public that which the public is entitled to know. The reason the Conservatives are pushing for this is they want the information to come out now. And they do not want the information to come out after being analyzed by the ethics commissioner. And the only reason they want that is because they want Pierre.
That's it.
Or Mr. Barrett. Or Denise Batters. Or Andrew Scheer. Or Brian Lilly to be the one who is telling you that the Prime Minister has some terrible, horrible conflicts. That's the ethics commissioner's job, not Pierre's. They know there's paperwork because he filed it. They want to see what's on it. So they can spin narratives about conflicts existing before the person who actually is authorized to tell us and has the experience and expertise to tell us whether or not there's a conflict actually has time to do their work.
I think this comment from Ryan Beausoleil is quite interesting, and I agree with what he's saying. I mean, we can all agree Brookfield hasn't been the best company, but all he was doing is his job to do the best for a company he runs. Now he will do that for Canada.
Fiduciary responsibility. And here's the thing, and thank you for that comment, because we saw the work he did as a public servant for the Bank of Canada. And then he did some private work, and he did some private work before. And then he went to the Bank of England, and we saw the work that he's done there. We've seen him work in the private sector and in the public sector. When in the private sector, he met his fiduciary responsibility by making sure that Brookfield could do the basic minimum that it needed to be listed on the U.S. Stock Exchange, which is in the best interest of that company. And when he was in the private sector,
I don't have to like it.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't like how, they put the shareholders above everything else, but that is his responsibility.
Them's are the rules. That's the game.
I don't like it, but I will observe that that was his responsibility, and he did his job.
Right. This is a question of hate the game, don't hate the player.
Yeah.
Right? So the same dedication that he used at Brookfield was the same dedication he used for the people who were his shareholders at the Bank of Canada and the people who were his shareholders at the Bank of England. Whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, he fulfills his fiduciary responsibility. That's a good thing. Consistency over time, over businesses, over sectors. That's a good thing.
Indeed.
Right? This guy. So with Rosie Barton.
Well, I wanted to address Rosie here quickly.
Okay.
And
do you have it?
I have something for you. It's very quick. Very, very quick.
Okay.
It's just a tweet. Yeah. It's not even a video.
Yes. It's a tweet.
It's a tweet from T-Dot resident. It says, I have moved all of my investments into a blind trust well before the 120-day requirement. But what about the cash in your pocket? Didn't that go up by 0.4% today against the US dollar? I mean, it's satirical, and yet it's not far off from what she did. It's great satire because it nails it.
Okay. Oh my God. Oh, I love Damn.
Well, it's like she didn't ask a tough question. This is again from T-Dot resident. She implied that Carney must be in a conflict despite Carney saying he is following the rules faster than he is required to.
Okay. I just sent you something, Mr. Grizzly. The first one is the tweet by Rosemary Barton. And here's the thing. Sometimes when journalists make the mistake of making themselves the story,
yeah, she really.
You have two options. You have the first option to go, oh yeah, maybe, yeah, I could have done better. I'll do better next time. And Stephanie Levitt's same thing. I said Stephanie Levitt is our best reporter, and she's prepared and all that. Yeah, but everybody has a bad day. She wasn't on that day. Asking that question that way. But Rosemary Barton decided that she was going to, what did she say?
I hope all conservatives tweeting about me and my tough questions finally agree to appear in my program. They have an open invitation.
You misspelled loaded. Respectfully, Miss Barton.
Well,
that wasn't a tough question.
Let's pivot just ever so slightly on this one, because this is interesting. From David Aiken, ever since he announced his run for CPC leadership, Pierre Poilievre has never sat down for an interview with an English language national news network.
Mm-hmm. And David Aiken, you know what I'd say? Be nice to people on the way up.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember that very, very first news conference that Pierre had, where I said, oh, look, we got a liberal hack here that they sent here to ask questions. That was former Toronto Sun columnist David Aiken.
Yeah.
I think one of the deans of the Parliamentary Press Gallery. He did the prison rules where he went into the first one and then attacked the biggest guy in the yard, David Aiken, in front of everyone, one of his own on top of that, someone from the Sun. Hey, I can do this to David frickin' Aiken, and he wrote for the Sun.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest of you better get in line.
Be prepared to be beat down.
And since then, he's done it. The local journalist in the Orchard, and then Karen Shalin, and then the lady from a CP who happened to be working that beat on one day, and then he tore a strip off her. And how many times has he done it?
She corrected him, though. She corrected him quickly.
Yes, but how many times?
You got those numbers from the government. Well, there's your problem, right? But you want to be the government, so you're saying we can't trust the government, and you want to be the government. He's not very smart.
He's not very smart. Now, in Rosie's tweet, that said, yes, even though she did misspell loaded, that's tough. Conservatives praising her for this type of journalism, because conservatives were, yeah, way to go, good journalism, should be first in line to get a taster for Putin.
Mm-hmm.
That they are not is very telling.
I think so.
Yay, CBC. Yeah, Rosemary Barton, you stuck it to Mark Carney. You asked him the tough questions. Yeah. Okay. Will you come on Power and Politics? Oh, no. We don't. We only send strategists to do that. We don't come on ourselves on the CBC. No. We don't want to actually asked to be questions by the CBC or CP.
Well, because the CBC is Trudeau's paid for. I mean, Carney's paid for. I mean, the Liberal Party.
Now,
he's such a whiny, smarmy little puke. I mean, look. How do I say this and not sound like an asshole? I don't care if I sound like an asshole. He ranks super high on the Martin Shkreli face punch scale.
Okay.
We all remember Martin Shkreli?
Yeah.
The guy who raised the price of a basic drug to keep people alive by 12,000% or something.
Yep.
Now he's in prison because Obama basically said, find something and throw this guy in the clink.
Jeez.
He had the most punchable face I've ever seen, and Polyev is ranking high on the Martin Shkreli face punch scale. Not saying you should punch him, just there's a scale.
Yes, I believe the German word is Orphevengeschichte, because the Germans have a word for everything.
Yes, they do.
I think it literally means a face made for punching, or something. If we go back to Mr. Carney's press conference, if you still have it.
Yeah, I still have it. Do I still have it? Yeah, I do. I still have it.
Okay.
Here you go.
1948, he talks about a little more news that Canada has been making with regard to our future alignment with the United States.
Mr. Prime Minister, you told your defense minister to review the F-35 contracts, and what I want to know is what exactly are you talking about? What's on the table exactly?
Well, the way Cabinet works, or at least the way Cabinet works in my government, is the Defence Minister and I had a conversation. The Defence Minister raised the issue with me. We had a discussion about Canada's options, and the fact is that under the contract, as you may know, after a certain number of purchases, then we have options on subsequent aircrafts. Given the geopolitical environment, given the fact that there are options, given the need for value for money, given the possibility of having substantial production of alternative aircraft in Canada, as opposed to sending, as we have been, on average 80 cents of every dollar to the United States, it's prudent and in the interest of Canada to review those options, and that's what the process that the Defence Minister has initiated.
Is this something that your allies are asking you about, or what is it that you're telling your allies with respect to this? My understanding is that President Macron, for example, is shopping around, don't buy US, buy European military goods, and that they have replacements.
Well, I think, what are you hearing? Well, I can tell you what's in the public domain. I can tell you in the public domain that the for example, Portugal is the government of Portugal is taking steps to diversify their supply. What's also in the public domain is a very substantial effort in Europe to so-called rearm Europe, which is a significant consolidation and increase in the amount of defense spending in Europe. Now, that is of interest to us as Canada because as a potential alternative supplier. It creates the potential to create supply chains that mean that Canadian companies are participating in the development of these defense systems, and we are actively exploring. And this, full disclosure, this is one of the discussions that I had both in Paris and in the UK, was the potential participation. Now, the UK is not formally in that, but we can see, particularly given our security posture in Europe, given potential steps in Ukraine, given our own security needs, that diversification of our suppliers in a way that ensures that as much as possible of that production resides in Canada and benefits Canadians in multiple ways is a prudent thing to do. That's what I can tell you.
Bonjour, Monsieur Carnet. Joël Denis Bellavance de la Presse.
So interesting moves there with regard to military, and as we talked about on the show the other day, is if Europe starts to build more capacity, if Asia starts to build more capacity, if we start to build more capacity to produce and manufacture our own weapons and military equipment, and if we use our own steel and our own stuff to do that, and we build up these factories and we build up this capacity, there will need to be continuing and ongoing projects to have made this initial investment in building the capacity. Right, when we built those 2 shipyards, right, we have to be able to take on contracts from somebody else to build more ships, right? Because we're not going to build enough ships for ourselves to keep them going. These are permanent displacements of resources and contracts. That big thing that the Europeans just said that they were going to do is $163 billion. About $100 billion of that would have normally gone to the US. They are spending all of that in Europe now, or maybe even in Canada and other places, but they're not going to be spending it in the United States. So they lose that 100 billion off that 163, and then all future production contracts from those nations and nations that prefer to deal with those nations instead of the United States now. And all the materials that go into that now get diverted to that supply line instead of to the United States.
Well, there's something interesting happening here. It just came across my feed from the Ottawa Citizen. This was updated 31 minutes ago. The U.S. could block Canadian attempts to buy new fighter jets to replace F-35s.
Go ahead. Give us a reason.
Well, according to this, it said the Liberal government, as you know, has committed $19 billion to purchase 88 F-35s from the U.S., but is only under contract for the first 16 planes. The Liberal Party could consider purchases of Eurofighter jets built by a consortium which includes Airbus as well as the French-built Rafale. Another favorite aircraft is the Saab Gripen from Sweden. Saab was the runner-up in Canada's fighter jet contest and had proposed building Gripens in Canada. I don't know if it's Gripen or Gripen, Gripen is how it's spelt. But because all of these jets contain U.S.-built equipment, the Americans could block any potential sales to Canada, say defense analysts. The Gripen or Gripen engine, for instance, is American technology. The ability of the Americans to block a sale would be highest with the Gripen because of the engine, said defense analyst Martin Shadwick, who is retired from teaching strategic studies at York University in Toronto. Rafale would have the least American content. Alan Williams, the former chief of procurement at the Department of National Defense, said the U.S. has the ability to block sales of equipment with American technology and noted that Trump is trying to send a message to Canada by engaging in a trade war. Williams said the F-35 represents a strategic vulnerability for Canada since the U.S. has total control over software upgrades and spare parts on the aircraft. I would not expect Trump to hold back software updates, but it is a risk, he added. I would expect him personally, myself. I would expect him to do that because he's siding with Putin. Williams said Carney was right to ask for a review of the F-35 purchase, but he doubted the Prime Minister will receive a proper analysis from the RCAF or the DND, as officials from both organizations were highly supportive and promoted the F-35 acquisition. Bill Blair's press secretary, Laurent de Cazeneuve, did not respond to repeated requests for comment. DND did not respond to repeated requests for comment. When reached for comment, Saab officials did not say whether the U.S. could block a sale of Gripens to Canada because of the engine issue. But Simon Carroll, president of Saab Canada, noted in an email to the Ottawa Citizen that the company remains prepared to support Canada's defense readiness by air, land, and sea. The first of Canada's F-35s will be delivered to a U.S. military base in 2026 and then into Canada in 2028. Canada plans to operate the aircraft until 2060. Supporters of Canada's F-35 purchase point to the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts that Canadian companies have earned by supplying parts for the U.S. aircraft. That, in turn, has sustained or created Canadian aerospace jobs. But on February 28th, the National Post reported that Trump had told Lockheed Martin he wanted those jobs back in the U.S. when the Canadian contracts came up for renewal. The F-35 program has had a controversial history in Canada. The Liberal government originally committed to funding the development of the aircraft, but did not commit to purchasing the stealth fighter, as procurement chief Williams oversaw the development initiative. At a high-profile news conference in 2010 featuring then Defense Minister Peter MacKay sitting in the cockpit of an F-35 mock-up, the Stephen Harper government announced it was purchasing the plane, but increasing costs and technical problems dogged the F-35 program. In 2012, pardon?
And it was a sole source contract initially, which is what scrapped it and had to have the process done again. So when you said earlier, those who really wanted it, those who really wanted it because they arranged it to be a sole source.
Correct. In a 2012 interview with the CBC, Conservative MP Chris Alexander claimed the government had never said it would buy F-35s, despite obvious evidence to the contrary. During the 2015 election campaign, Justin Trudeau vowed his government would never purchase the F-35s. As Prime Minister, Trudeau continued to point out the Canadian military had no need for the F-35, and he blamed the Conservatives for agreeing to purchase a problem-plagued fighter jet. But the Liberal government altered its usual procurement approach for the fighter jet purchase after the Trump administration threatened in 2019 to pull the F-35 from the Canadian competition. Usually, companies bidding on such large Canadian contracts are required to provide specific industrial and technological benefits with dollar figures that would be tied to the purchase of a particular piece of military equipment. That was changed for the fighter jet competition. With the 2023 announcement, the Liberals not only committed to the acquisition, but also increased the number of F-35s to be bought to 88 from the 65 Conservatives had wanted. Interesting.
Well, so much time went by that we have more to replace now.
Yes.
By the way, I believe the French plane is the Rafale and not the Rafale. Yeah, Rafale.
Okay.
Or some
R-A-F-A-L-E, so Raphael.
Yeah,
Raphael.
Rafale.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rafale.
Now,
which
here's
is,
something that we need to also understand, that we have the ability to build fighter jet engines in this country. We built a brilliant one that was never fully tested called the Iroquois engine for the Avro Arrow. It met the requirements on paper of the RCAF in 1959 or 55. I can't remember what it was, which was 100,000 pounds dry thrust. There's no fighter jet engine on Earth that has that right now, but the Iroquois did back then. So we have the people, the knowledge, the know-how, the expertise to build our own engines. And we don't even have to do it from scratch. We can modify something we've already built. You got to remember the Avro Arrow was going to be a 100% Canadian fighter bomber from stem to stern. When they first flew them, they flew with non-Canadian engines, which is why the Iroquois was developed. The weapons program was being under development at the time, which was also 100% Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
The Diefenbaker government, as you know, canceled the Avro Arrow, which created to the biggest brain drain in Canadian history when it comes to aerospace engineers and aeronautical engineers. And as a direct result, the United States of America, via NASA, were able to set foot on the moon in July of 1969 because 35 of the top-ranking engineers from Avro went directly to work in the Apollo program.
Yep.
That is not a falsehood. That is not a boast. That is a simple fact of history.
Mr. Grizzly, last question for Mr. Kearney. This one will be a little while because he gives a very substantive answer here. But it's 2456, and it has to do with industrial carbon pricing and global tariffs. There's a question on the follow-up, and Pierre's recent announcement that he's going to make pollution free for everyone.
Right.
He found another tax to cut.
Okay.
Tonda McCharles with the Toronto Star. In Canada today, your political opponent, Mr. Poilievre, said that he would axe the industrial price on carbon. And I'd like to understand from you if you think that at this time, with all the threats against many of our big mainstay industries, which also are large emitters, if you think that your plan to tax them remains a viable and publicly supported plan.
Yeah. So our plan, and in fact the regime that's in place in Canada, and a variant of this regime is in place. There are some variances, you know, Tonda, between the provinces, but a variant of this linked to California is in place with Quebec and British Columbia, is to have a form of price for the largest on carbon, for the largest emitters, said differently, the largest polluters. Now, what we are doing is changing that system or improving that system so that the price that's paid can be reduced by so-called carbon credits that are allocated. We're adding additional ones. We will be adding additional ones that ensure that the polluters are paying so that Canadians can receive support to reduce their own emissions. So it's a more efficient system. It works better for the large polluters. It works better for Canadians. And it also is a system that recognizes the new trading reality. So we have to be able to connect the dots, something that the opposition is totally incapable of doing, proven themselves totally incapable of doing. So on the one hand, we have our largest trading partner, as we've been discussing, attacking us, putting tariffs on us. On the other hand, we have the opportunity to diversify trade. Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the European Union? Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the United Kingdom? Guess what one of the requirements will be to diversify trade to emerging Asia? Is to have a form of price on carbon. So we are able to think one step ahead. We're able to go out and see the world. We're able to help Canadian companies prepare. And you know what's going to happen 5 years, 10 years from now? If I have the pleasure of being in front of you, you'll be asking me the question, if we didn't do this, if we didn't help our companies get more prepared, the Americans are going to start caring about this again. They have elections every 4 years. They cared a great deal about this 3 months ago. Now all of a sudden they don't care about it. They're going to care about it again. We have an enormous opportunity here in Canada. The United Kingdom has an enormous opportunity. France has an enormous opportunity. Europe has an enormous opportunity to leapfrog over American companies where they're trying to turn back the clock and look inwards. We're going to take that opportunity. We're going to take that opportunity. It's going to create jobs and it's going to create new markets for our country.
President Trump has, thank you. My follow-up is that on April 2nd, President Trump is promising a much larger global tariff regime, including bringing back in the threatened 25% across the board tariffs on Canada. And you've talked about the need for retaliatory tariffs at a dollar-for-dollar level. One assumes the punch coming is going to be much greater. Yeah. How much more are you prepared?
Sorry.
U.S. question.
Yeah.
How much more are you prepared to go in terms of the monetary hit back, and how much do you think Canada can absorb? Can we?
This is an important question. It's a very important question. There is a limit, given the relative size of our economies, to the extent to which we should match U.S. tariffs. Right now, what the government has proposed, and with the 150 billion odd identified products, are products that have, as I said earlier, maximum impact in the United States and limited, but not zero, it's limited impact in Canada that we can affect. And my government's commitment is that we will use all of the revenues from those tariffs to support Canadian workers that are affected by the U.S. trade actions. Pierre Poilievre's commitment, as his commitment is anytime anything changes, is he's going to use it to cut taxes. So if you aren't paying any taxes because you don't have a job, you're out of luck. Okay, we're going to go help those who are affected by it, as we should, as Canadians want us to, in my view. Now, so just to summarize on your question, there are limits. Now we'll see what happens April 2nd. We'll see what happens after that. We are not going to take an action that we think is not ultimately going to influence the United States, and certainly not one that is outright harmful to Canada, given the overall approach. So this will be very deliberate, and there is a limit, full stop. There is a limit to matching these tariffs dollar for dollar, given the fact that our economy is a tenth the size of the United States. Thank you.
Let's put that into our press conference. Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Then later, he was walking away, and then somebody said, "Oh, well, can you say that in French?" And then he came back and finished it. I wanted to show this answer because, Kits and Cubs, if you've been following the show, these are things I've been saying. Right? The dollar for dollar is a good thing, but there's only so much that we can do because of the size of our economies. Right? This guy, I'm seeing some comments in the chat there. It's sort of like, it's the way that he delivers and the way he talks. It's so different from how loud everything has been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he's laid back. He's chill.
It's so refreshing. It's so refreshing. I'm even seeing some comments here. It's like, don't make me say something nice according to the libs, but nice about the libs. But Carney seems right. I'll pick Carney over whatever the other option is. Right. Now I'm going to transition to something. Hopefully, I just sent it to you, Mr. Grizzly. I did. No, I haven't yet. I haven't yet. Okay, I'm sending it right now.
there's something very interesting happening in the world right now. Obviously, you know this, but I'm reading this on the CBC. It says Trump claims he'd rather deal with a liberal than a conservative in Ottawa.
Huh?
He says that I don't care who leads the next Canadian government. U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday said he wouldn't mind if the Liberal Party won the upcoming election. I'd rather deal with a liberal than a conservative.
Trump is upset that Trudeau's gone.
Well, somebody had to keep Melania happy. I'm not making an accusation there.
Tiki. Tiki, tiki, tiki.
I'm not saying there was anything bad happening.
Men, find yourself someone who looks at you the way Melania looks at Justin.
Exactly.
Or Ivanka looks at us too.
Yes.
By the way. Wow. Okay. I'm looking at it right here by Stephanie Ha.
I'm just like floored by this.
Amid trade tensions and speculation over a looming federal election, U.S. President Donald Trump is weighing in on Canadian politics yet again, saying he'd rather deal with a liberal than a conservative. In an interview with Fox News' Laura Ingraham, which I have to say, in which she pushed back on him a lot, like isn't this Canada stuff a little silly, or not push back as much as you can push back? Because apparently it seems that the trick with Donald Trump is so long as you don't mention his name, you can insult him. Or say he's wrong, so long as you don't say his name. It says, yeah, I think it's easier to actually deal with a liberal. Maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all. But okay, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all. But I didn't care enough to actually make a point to mention it during this Fox interview on time for everyone to see, to go all across the world. But I don't care. I've taken time out of my precious life, precious moments out of my life, to tell you that I don't care about something. People who don't care about something just walk on by.
Yeah,
they don't make a public announcement.
What was that famous line from Mad Men? I don't even think about you at all.
Right. That's a question I get, right? Often it's like, what do you think about this? I don't
think about it at all. I don't have time to dedicate to that. I'm busy. I have other things to worry about.
But when somebody asks me, before having an opinion on something, I ask myself, do I need an opinion on this?
I don't have to have an opinion on everything. I don't. Yeah,
and oftentimes I don't. I save a lot of time.
Frequently on this program. I go, people say, what do you think about this? And I go, I don't. I don't have an opinion on absolutely everything. I don't. Because I can't be that involved with absolutely everything. I'd never get anything done. And it would be hell for the anxiety and depression. Pierre Poilievre tweeted to comments on X saying that Mark Carney is weak and would cave to Trump's demand, insisting Canadians want a strong prime minister who will put Canada first.
Okay.
Last night, President Donald Trump endorsed Mark Carney. Why? Because as Trump said, he's easier to deal with and knows that I will be a tough negotiator and always put Canada first. Oh, come on. Poilievre, you can't handle a question from a reporter from a small town newspaper. You eat an apple in his face and demand you see the page when there is no actual page. You can't deal with that. How are you going to deal with Trump?
The Conservatives just announced that they are not going to have press on the campaign with them during the next election. Yeah. Come on. Right? Canadians don't want a weak and conflicted leader. Dude, you have a deferred prosecution agreement. Come on, man. Trump previously said, I think it's actually, then he turned around and says, the conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. Again. But you're bringing it up, aren't you? I don't care. He said negative things about me. I don't like him. I prefer the liberals because he said negative things about me. But I couldn't care. I don't care. I don't care.
If
I didn't want the grapes anyway.
I get a kick out of Pierre Poilievre saying, well, all Mark Carney has is slogans. Pot, have you met the kettle? Number one.
Cauldron.
Number two, he described Carney as weak. Did you get any sort of feeling or air or vibe or presence of weakness when he pushed back against Rosemary Barton for what?
For the second time?
Yeah, for the second
In a few
time.
weeks?
I mean, that interview with him, he was like, "No, hang on a second here." Basically said, "Bitch, please." I'm putting it into modern vernacular, but that's effectively what he said.
They grow up so fast. Proud Queen Beaver. I look at the dance, please.
I mean, it was classic. He cut her off because the line of questioning was absurd.
Oh, yeah.
And she didn't want him to, she wanted to cut him off in his answer. And he basically said, "Shut your fucking pie hole. Listen,
I'm not done
here's
yet."
how it is. Yeah, that's a weak man. Now somebody's going to say, "Well, that's just because she's a woman." Okay. Have a guy ask those questions and see what his response is. It won't be any different. The man is surrounded by estrogen. He has 4 children, all daughters, and a wife. An incredibly accomplished wife, by the way. Man is not threatened by anyone.
Yeah, exactly. So I just sent you something, Mr. Grizzly. The first one is really, really interesting, and I'm just going to play it through, and I want you.
Oh yeah, no, I
want
have
to-
that. I had that queued up already.
Exactly, because here's the thing, right? There's what the conservatives say, and then there's reality.
Right.
And again, as Mark Carney said, the conservatives say a lot of things that they get wrong. Really. But here, we've got somebody. Journalism is actually being committed here. Power and Politics went out and asked a man named Ian Sherman, who is a lawyer who specializes in government ethics at the York University's Osgood Hall Law School, and asked specifically, is Mark Carney falling short of Canada's conflict of interest rules? Please enjoy actually hearing from somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about.
Well, no, the conservatives will dismiss him because he's an expert.
Oh, yes.
Right? They hate expertise.
Yes.
They like the electricians that capture lightning from the sky and send it down a wire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Conservatives continue to press the new prime minister to disclose his personal finances. Last week, Mark Carney put his assets in a blind trust, a move conservatives say doesn't go far enough. They say Canada could be in and out of an election campaign before that information is officially made public.
If Mark Carney's going to go to Canadian voters and ask for a 4th Liberal term, he needs to be transparent.
Mark Carney on the...
I just need to pause that there for a second. Take anything that comes out of the mouth of Michael Barrett with a grain of salt.
Again, he needs to be transparent, but we're going to not allow people on our planes to follow us during the campaign. But he needs to be transparent.
Every time I read a tweet from Michael Barrett, I'm like, oh, I just got stupider.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good-looking, polished individual.
Mm-hmm.
He's not that bright.
The other hand says he's fulfilled what's required of him and argues he's being held to a different standard.
My assets have been put into a blind trust well in advance of the requirements, so they've been disposed. But what happens is that there's a discussion with the Ethics Commissioner for certain screens around certain issues, and that's a process that is underway.
Okay, most of us will never use a blind trust, so here for some more clarity.
Just before we get to that, shouldn't the Conservatives love the hell out of Mark Carney because he's a banker, a capitalist? I mean, I know why they're not happy with him. He didn't run for their party.
Yeah. They picked him as bad governor of Bank of Canada, and they wanted him to be finance minister when they knew that Jim Flaherty would go. They wanted him. He rejected him. This is the screed of a jilted lover.
Yes, it is. It is.
And how this all works. We've got Ian Stedman. He's an associate professor of Canadian Public Law and Governance at York University. Ian Stedman, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me on, David. Appreciate it.
Okay, you've seen the political debates. Is Prime Minister Mark Carney falling short in any way in terms of what's expected of someone in public office? He says he's being asked to meet a different standard. What's your sense?
He's definitely being asked to meet a different standard than what has been set out in the Act. But I've been saying for years that I think the rules that we have in place, the legislation, hasn't kept up with the public's expectations. And so now we're seeing politicians use that to their advantage and slinging a little bit of ill will and mud at Carney to say, why haven't you done more? But yeah, he's right. He's met the standards so far.
Okay, and the fact that he's done it early, in advance of when he had to, does that make any difference in our ability to assess how things are being done?
No, because what's going to happen when he does disclose within the first 60 days of taking on the role is that it's a private disclosure. It goes to the office to review. And then if he does divest his assets and they be put into a blind trust, his actual assets would never get disclosed anyways. So I actually think the public should feel confident that he's still subject to a conflict of interest rule. He still can't put himself in a conflict of interest.
Okay, so I want to dig into that a little bit more, but is there an obvious extra step he could or should take at this point in time, or has he done everything he's supposed to do by the book?
He's done everything he's supposed to do by the book. There's an argument to be made, and that's what is being made by the opposition, that he should publicly disclose all of those assets, regardless of what his obligations are under the law.
What do you see as the value of that? If he were to say, here's what I own, this much stock in this company, I mean, one of the criticisms was that Donald Trump will leverage it against him. Well, by putting it out in public, he can be leveraged, it seems to me. It's like, what is the value in a full itemized disclosure of everything he owns?
I think in the current environment, that's a really good point to make. I think in the broader environment, which is we want to incentivize people coming to public office and putting themselves out there, we're setting an interesting precedent. I think it's worthy of a much more robust conversation than just slinging at the new prime minister some mud when he takes office. But it is an interesting point to be made that Poilievre has made about disclosing before, so as a candidate, worthy of a discussion, I think.
Okay, so here's the question I have about the blind trust and its operations. Obviously, Mark Carney is fully aware of what his assets are when he put them into a blind trust and then hands them over to the control of a trustee. Do they change? How quickly do they change? If he has stock in a company that obviously puts him in a conflict of interest, can the ethics commissioner or the trustee say, you've got to the trustee has to liquidate those and replace them? What happens to the assets once they are no longer under Mark Carney's control?
Neither Mr. Carney, Prime Minister Carney, pardon me, nor the ethics commissioner will be dictating to the trustee what to do with it. Once it's in the trust, it's blind. The trustee will report back to the office with general kind of, this is what the assets are worth, not what the specifics of the assets are. Prime Minister Carney will not be allowed to direct the trustee in any way whatsoever. He will just get quarterly reporting to him through the office. So it will be vetted by the office itself.
So what typically happens with the asset mix when a public office holder puts them in? Because I know there are definitions in the rules saying you can't have any assets that put you materially in a conflict, right? Where you can obviously enrich yourself by the actions of the public office you hold. So let's do a thought argument. I'm the new Minister of Heritage. I have $1 million in stock in the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. I put that in a blind trust. I know that's there, so I can take steps to make that stock more valuable. How do we guard against what would be an obvious thing you could do as a public office holder if, even if it's in a blind trust, you know what you put in? How is that guarded against in this system?
I mean, you know what you put in, but the idea being that you don't know what happens to it when it's being managed by someone else. So you should still, in your conversations with the ethics commissioner, put something in place that says you shouldn't be investing in this area or making decisions about this area if the ethics commissioner knows you have assets in a particular sector. But the idea with a blind trust is that once it's in, it could be sold immediately, and you really have no idea. You really are guessing. That being said, there are some assets, like if you're President Trump and your name is on a building, that you'll know when it's sold.
Look, yes, I understand, and big real estate things, but the issue, like, let's say, for example, the Prime Minister talked about this today, his role in Brookfield. He says he's going to need an ethics screen, a conflict of interest management system of some kind to deal with Brookfield. So if he has shares, stock options, or anything in Brookfield in his blind trust. Could the ethics commissioner or the trustee say those have to be dealt with, even if it is in a blind trust? How do you manage something like that and a conflict of interest screen to put yourself beyond reproach?
So lots of ministers have screens in place. Minister Anand has some in place because of her husband's interests. So it is quite standard procedure, to be honest, for the ethics commissioner to say, you have these assets, we're going to put a screen in place for a period of time. It could be the case that the screen stays in place throughout the whole term of office, but that's going to be something that's negotiated, and then it would be publicly disclosed on the registry, which is on the ethics commissioner's website, when that screen is put in place. But really, it's on the commissioner to decide the extent of how long that screen lasts and to what it applies.
Right. So what does the screen mean, just in terms of its day-to-day function? So you use the example of Minister Anand. So, when you're a minister, you can be recused because there's a full cabinet. When you're the prime minister, you're so central. It's a bit more difficult, right? So how practically does that work?
Practically, that's a really good question. At the end of the day, if something's happening in the public eye, you're going to be aware of it. But the idea being it doesn't come across your desk for decision making. Someone else actually signs on the dotted line. Practically speaking, there's no way to avoid conflicts of interest, full stop. We really just have to hope that the people we put into public office, that we elect to public office, maybe not yet in this case, but that we eventually elect into public office, act with integrity and act within the spirit of the laws. Yeah.
Okay, but essentially the standard that is in place here now, this is the same one that's been in place throughout the Trudeau years, the same one that was in place during the Harper years. So this is the standard, and as of right now, he has complied with it by your assessment of where we are.
Yeah, but what's interesting about this dialogue now is that every few elections, one of the parties makes ethics part of their platform and makes a promise to open up the act and to maybe improve it in some way. So hopefully this is a sign of things to come.
Okay, but I have one more question sort of on this, because it's going to matter in this election. The Conservative argument has been that Canadians won't even get the summary of Mark Carney's assets until long after the election. Now, by the normal timeline of within so many days of assuming the office, sending something, and then that's where the 120 days comes in, we're probably going to have an election end of April, early May, so that's well before 120 days. But the work is already in the hands of the ethics commissioner, according to what the Carney campaign has told us. He sent it March 9th. Does that allow the ethics commissioner? Is there a world where the ethics commissioner could do the public summary and have it out there before election day, assuming those timelines I gave us hold?
Right. The timeline is a maximum. So within 120 days, that public disclosure statement needs to be signed. Mm-hmm. It is possible that the ethics commissioner turns it around, hands it to Carney, and says, sign this within 20 days. It is possible. None of us will ever know, though. That happens behind closed doors. Does it make a difference? I mean, if the disclosure statement just says everything's in a blind trust, you're not going to get a line-by-line disclosure of his assets anyways.
Right.
But you are going to be confident that he's subject to conflict of interest laws regardless, and that he is aware of those assets, and he should avoid a conflict at all costs.
Okay. So the bottom line, I guess I wonder is, this is going to be an issue in this campaign, right? And people don't know the fine print of the conflict of interest rules and how blind trusts work and these sorts of things. So trustee would be someone independent of Mr. Carney, who he cannot influence. This is an important point. Just what's your sense of how confident Canadians should be that the system that is in place is sufficient enough to guard against a conflict of interest, the types that are being alleged, in the current political debate right now, and how does it sort of compare to global standards? Is this sort of best global practice that we're talking about here?
Canada is right up there at the top with best practices. Yes. Should we be confident? There's nothing unique about Prime Minister Carney that we haven't seen before. It's the same standard for anyone who becomes a minister or a prime minister. You have that 60 days to file and another 60 days to publicly disclose. He holds assets like everyone else has held assets. There's nothing unique here that we've never seen before. It's the same standards that we've always applied. If we think we need a better standard or a higher standard, hopefully that makes it into some of the parties' platforms.
But as you look at it right now, is there a problem here that needs to be solved? Or is this a political argument?
It's political. It's just political banter. It's more capital to launch these grenades at him than you lose, by not launching them. So it just looks good for Poilievre right now, I think.
Well, Ian Stebbin, I appreciate that. A sober examination of all this. Ian Stebbin of York University. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
You see why I wanted to just let it wash over you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I agree. Oh, here's something for you. Just in on the feed. You'll be excited for this. Homan defeats Norway for the win.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Good.
just in from Devon. Canadians find a path to victory and are now 6-2 at the Women's World Curling Championships, tied for third spot with Sweden with 3 games left. So I thought I'd run that by. That's just straight from Devon's.
They lost to South Korea last night, which is, I think, the team that's on the top of the standings at the moment now, and the tournament's actually being held in South Korea at the moment. So yeah, this particular thing, right? It's just noise. Mark Carney is not special. There's nothing about him because he was a central banker that makes him any more special or any more. We should have any more fear or anything than anybody else. There's same rules. He's all for everyone. He's complied with everything, and he currently is covered by conflict of interest legislation. He currently has to comply with it right now. And again, we have an entire track record with private and public service careers in which nothing has come up, versus a guy with 20 years in parliament who benefited greatly from a political crime from his party in the election that he cheated with in and out, and who he himself has cheated. And I've not seen Pierre Poilievre come to a podium and take questions about why it is that he has a deferred prosecution agreement and how it is that all of that went down, and what was it like when he met the person that determined this, and how transparent and forthright he was, and what was he asked, and what document, and we didn't ask him to show us publicly all the documents and stuff like that he showed. I mean, if we're talking about disclosure, Pierre Poilievre has gone his entire career not making any mention whatsoever of the fact that he has a deferred prosecution agreement.
No. He's going to hide that, bury that as much as he possibly can, because, God forbid anybody finds out. And nobody will know, right? Nobody will know.
But everybody needs to be held to another standard. Now, again, as Mr. Stedman says here, there is a discussion to be had if you want to change the rules. And personally, myself, I'm very much open to one. I would personally like it if all leaders of parties with seats in the House were subject to the rules that everybody says, well, you don't have to do it. He doesn't have to do it because he's not the prime minister. It's like everybody in Canada, because the way that our system works is that the leader of the party that gets the most seats has the first option. Right? There are 5 people.
I believe all leaders of all federal parties should be subject to an emoluments clause, if you will.
Yes.
Put it in a blind trust and get your NCCOP clearance.
There are 5. Yes, there are 5 people in Canada right now who have a shot. Some of them legit, not very much, like Elizabeth May, but have a shot. They are party leaders with parties that have seats in the House of being prime minister. All of them, as leaders of parties, could be making arrangements with other people for money and power and favors to trade in unethical ways once they gain power. The fact that you're an opposition leader does not magically make it impossible for you to be influenceable. If you have a shot of being elevated to the role of prime minister, even if it's 0.2% as a party leader, you should be disclosing. You should be disclosing to the ethics commissioner, as all MPs do. You should be putting all of your controlled assets in a blind trust, and you should be sitting for your NCCOP security clearance and be able to obtain it. And if you're not able to obtain it, then you have to resign your job as party leader. I would like to have that discussion.
Well, maybe write your MP, who we've had on this show, actually.
So, we have this thing in Canada, like these standards are only required of the prime minister because they're the only ones that can make a decision at the time. Yeah, but you have a whole bunch of people that want to be prime minister as well. And if you think that they are not making deals, hey, if ever I get elected, maybe we can do it. Come on.
It happens every day.
Come on.
Every day. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. It's all quid pro quo constantly.
The rules apply to all of them in the same way.
They apply to everybody equally, or they apply to no one.
Yes. And right now, Pierre wants special rules for Mark Carney.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants a standard for Mark Carney that he himself is not willing to meet.
Nope.
Come on. Again, he's telling you who he is.
Well, and this is, I don't know how to, delta something, I think it's written in Greek, I'm not sure. So how the heck does he think it's okay to not have his clearance when we have active adversaries now and interference?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Mark Carney just said that. He says, I was privy to these conversations that Pierre Poilievre cannot be to because he does not have his clearance.
Yeah. Now, because we have this loophole going on in Canada where you get the security clearance automatically if you're prime minister. So Pierre's trying to wait it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
is he?
But we haven't.
Should be interesting.
But here's the thing: is if only the prime minister had it automatically, and they said, we want to give it to the leader of the opposition, but nobody else, that would be one thing. But there was a recommendation that all party leaders have it, and probably even all premiers should have it.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, of all the party leaders, he's the only one who does it.
Correct.
Miss May has it. Mr. Singh has it. Even Monsieur Blanchet has it. By making himself the cheese who stands alone, it seems that the national consensus among all party leaders is we should have this. All the other party leaders are telling Pierre, you should have this. All the party leaders who have seen the information are telling Pierre, hey, dude, you should really get your clearance to take a look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And still, he won't.
Well, he refuses.
But we're going to talk about Carney's transparency.
But, well, you can remember he kept refusing because he says, because Justin Trudeau will just stamp top secret on it, and then I can't talk about it. Okay, for the umpteenth frickin' time. The prime minister does not determine what is secret or top secret. There are different agencies that do that. And then they put a briefing across his desk, and it's need-to-know basis. He's not privy to absolutely every secret in the nation because it's need-to-know.
Exactly.
When he needs to know, they tell him. How did it just he pretends like people are stupid. He wants you to be held in the dark and say, this is what the prime... No, that is not how it works. This is what I'm so sick of. And he never gets called out. We're the only ones calling it. Well, I shouldn't say we're the only ones. That's not true. That's not true at all. There are other organizations calling out his lies. The Tyee, the Walrus, National News Watch. But some of the legacy media is not calling out Poilievre for his lies, his half-truths, his innuendos, his fabrications, his overall aggressive, abusive behavior towards reporters for simply doing their job. But boy, are they going to pick on Mark Carney for responding to Rosemary Barton, not O'Barton. Rosie O'Barton. Wow.
You're still on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, Rosemary Barton.
Good lass, Rosie O'Barton.
I was thinking Rosie O'Donnell. Rosemary Barton.
Yes. Another one probably.
And it's Rosemary, not Rosemary.
Yes. So I have one last little clip in there, Mr. Grizzly. I think it was the second one. This was. There's going to be, I think, maybe a little bit of repeat in what you saw in the in the previous clip there, but it's just a 3-minute because Mark Carney also made a stop in Nunavut, so he was asked a couple of is it Nunavut? Yeah, made a couple of questions. I forgot that for a second, and was asked a couple of questions. So you might hear a little bit of a repeat there. There was more to the discussion. They had a big discussion about stuff having to do with military in the future and that kind of stuff. And we already had too much packed on the show, so I didn't want to add that too. But we will talk about what was discussed over there. Maybe if we have an opportunity to find some time to have Kit Hugh, it would be nice because there's been a lot of defense stuff It might be nice to have him in for a little conversation there when we can make a time for it. But this is just like I said, a little taste of what happened when he went up north.
My question is a little broader, pertains to my colleague's question. Your predecessor shared his assessment with the Canadian people and the world that President Trump's goals and motives in Canada were to economically crush the country in order to annex it. I know you've only been in power for a few days, but I'm sure you've had briefings and meetings. And I wonder, ahead of this phone call with President Trump, do you share Prime Minister Trudeau's assessment, or have you made your own personal assessment about what President Trump really wants from Canada?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think what President Trump wants, he wants several things. One is he wants to end the fentanyl crisis in the United States. I respect that. He wants good, high-paying jobs in America. He wants more investment in America. He wants repatriation of many American industries and firms to the United States. So, and I fully respect that. I think he will respect that as Prime Minister of Canada, I want to end the fentanyl crisis in Canada. I want to grow good, high-paying jobs in Canada. And of course, I want to protect with my colleagues and reaffirm and reinforce our sovereignty of all of Canada. So that's the starting point for the discussion.
Just listening closely to your answer previously, it sounded like you may be changing, and listening to what you said last night about the limits of retaliatory tariffs, for example. It sounds like maybe you are nuancing your strategy vis-a-vis President Trump by perhaps leaving trade talks to others. We know you have authorized these conversations to happen in Washington, D.C. as early as this week at USTR level. Are you going to be trying to focus more on positive things that you can talk about with President Trump?
I wouldn't necessarily have that characterization. What I'm saying is severalfold. The first, and I'll go back to where you started with your previous question, which is we are focused on building this economy. Today's announcement is, of course, about sovereignty, it's about protection, but it's also about building the economy here in Nunavut. We are going to build Canada. Canada is strong, and it's going to get stronger. We can give ourselves more than anything that President Trump or other trade partner can take away. Okay? That's a basic point. And that if there is a misconception of that in the United States, I'm not saying the president has that misconception, but if there's a misconception of that, we are going to disabuse that misconception. We're going to grow this economy because that's good for Canadians, better for our future, and we can do it, and we're going to do it.
Okay. So just a little taste there too, because I thought that was a very, very astute question.
Mm-hmm.
Are you bringing in the same assessment? Being way more diplomatic here, fentanyl, we understand it. Hey, we have a fentanyl program too. We can respect that, right? Like this, leaving some options. But again, coupled with what he had said previously, we are going to, when we talk, we are going to be having comprehensive discussions about our economic and security future in a climate of respect in which the issue of Canada as the 51st state is considered resolved, and resolved as a, it's not going to happen, eh?
Yeah.
And you will stop talking about it. So, no wonder Trump thinks we're nasty. We actually mean what we say. Unlike him. So, stay tuned, kids and cubs. It's going to be an interesting ride.
Well, as Trump said, show this clip. It's only a few seconds, 36 seconds.
Any one of
You're tougher with Canada than you are with some of our biggest adversaries.
Only because it's meant to be our 51st state.
Okay, but
but listen to this for a second.
We need their territory. They have territorial advantage. We're not going to let them get close to China.
Look, right? I deal with every country, indirectly or directly. one of the nastiest countries to deal with is Canada. The people that, now this was Trudeau, the people that good old Justin, I call him Governor Trudeau, his people were nasty. And they weren't telling the truth. They never told the truth. You know that.
They weren't telling the truth. Are you referring to the deal that you signed in 2018 that said at the time was the greatest deal in the history of deals? Nobody negotiated a better deal ever. It's the best deal ever. And now you're saying it sucks?
They never tell the truth. Projection alert. Projection alert.
You think?
Okay, Scott. Girl. Madam President Trump. Again, if we are going to have a contest about who doesn't tell the truth.
Oh my goodness. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Get out the hose because this guy's flaming.
You are up to your ears in gold medals. Okay. The non-truth telling Olympics, you win all the gold medals every year. It's held.
I mean, from Frank, he's like, even Laura Ingraham is trying to help him see the difference. That is telling.
Right.
That is telling.
Right.
I mean, she is a terrible person. Her own family has disowned her. All of her siblings are like, my sister's, I mean, I've seen their testimonials. She knows the difference and she's trying to help him see it. And he just, no.
Yeah. So, last little thing, according to Althea Raj here. A party contending for power does not want media traveling with potential prime minister. Quote, there will be no media contingent on a conservative bus or plane, though we welcome and encourage participation at all public events. In other words, if you can get yourself to Prince Rupert, then sure, you're free to cover it. So again,
well,
but hey,
if something needs to be added to that story that was pointed out by Chantal Hébert, was somebody said, well, if they want to go, they got to damn well pay their, well, they do. That's the thing. It's not a free ride. When they travel with the politicians, the media company that sends the reporter along pays for it. Always has.
Absolutely. According to Althea Raj, because somebody said that to her. Here's what's happening. The Conservative Party just told the grumbling media crowd to pound sand. No more free rides on campaign buses and planes. Reporters can whine all they want, but if they're serious about coverage, they'll manage their own travel or fire up the Zoom call. Like the rest of us, because like the rest of us is following the campaign, asking questions, right? Time to let the journalists pay their own way instead of treating campaigns like taxpayer-funded sightseeing tours. Well, first of all, they weren't taxpayer-funded even. But Althea Raj, the rides were never free. The parties charged tens of thousands of dollars for a seat. The CPC charged $3,000 a day once.
Yeah. It's never been free.
Okay. But it's, again, have you ever met Canada? Patriot.
Clearly not.
Oh, God. So it's like, we welcome and encourage participation at all public events. So if you can manage to find your way there, or if you're a local reporter that doesn't have all the resources or whatnot to challenge us on the BS, please do come.
Yeah.
But if you have any ability to check us in any way, shape, or form, we don't want you there. And also,
I better not see anybody embedded from Rebel or Juno then with the Conservatives.
I guess if a party leader suddenly had a 31-point swing in the polls, it probably would not be the first choice of a campaign to have journalists embedded in the campaign so that they can witness all the arguments and fighting and blaming and backbiting and backstabbing and accusations and throwing people under the bus and positioning when it's very clear that he's going to lose for the future. I guess having the daily drama being covered by 7 or 8 journalists who are there and hear all the screaming behind the door all the time, thus distracting you from your news of the day, is probably something a party would want.
They don't want their dirty laundry aired out in public. Nobody.
We're sniping at each other.
But it's going to be an interesting campaign. Here's the thing, that we don't even, when's the election? No writ has been dropped. No election has been called. House isn't sitting.
The writ will probably be drawn on Sunday.
You think?
I would assume.
Yeah. The House hasn't even reconvened, though.
Pardon?
The House is not reconvened. Parliament is not sitting.
Doesn't have to. He can call it before the House reconvenes. The House has to reconvene on the 24th, but the House has to reconvene on the 24th, right? Which is Monday.
Oh shit!
Election.
Weeks away.
Yeah, election writs usually are drawn on Sunday. Sunday is the 23rd. So if the House is not coming back on the 24th, the writ will be drawn on the 23rd. And again, we know when I keep on talking about the people that are making Prime Minister Carney's schedule, it seems that before that, sometime probably on Friday or something, there will be a First Minister's meeting with the Prime Minister.
Yes, I heard that.
So an international trip, not first to the United States, talking to France, talking to the UK, going to Nunavut, the 3 founding cultures, and then coming back and having an actual meeting with 13 premiers, then have the writ drawn and go. It's a beautiful setup. Whoever planned that, again.
Well, we assume this is what's happening, but we don't know. We don't know.
But if that's the thing, and if the writ is drawn, like I said, I suspect election date will be May 5th, because the other date would be April 28th, which would mean that early voting would be on Easter weekend.
Yeah,
and given that we only have one 4-day-long weekend, I am pretty sure that Canadians would not be happy with the party that made sure that people had to work.
And that 4-day-long weekend does not apply to every Canadian.
No, it doesn't.
Federal public servants, yes.
Right.
But that's about it. The rest of us have to work on the Monday.
But, so that would be my informed speculation, is that he will go see the Governor General on Sunday. The writ will be drawn, and we will have election date on May 5th.
Okay.
Could be wrong, but this is entirely speculation, just based on calendar and dates.
We shall see by next week.
All right, Mr. Grizzly, do we have a show?
We do indeed.
All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us, because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring, and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. Now, if you would like to make sure you do not miss an episode in podcast form, that QR code that just appeared will bring you to our pod page, which is sponsored by the Ray Girl. Thank you so much for all your assistance, the Ray Girl. We really appreciate it. And that's podpage.com/TheTrueNorthEagerBeaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. You go there and you click subscribe, and when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. If you would like to help us in other ways, please surf on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where Kits, Cassie, and Elaine are telling you to smash with our buttons. And if you're watching right now, remember, if you smash now, you don't have to remember to do it before you leave. So smash with our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. It makes us very happy when you do, and it helps us with the algorithm. So thank you so much. If you would like to help us in yet another way, because we do incur some costs to bring the show to you, and if you would like to support and encourage us to do more because you like the quality of our product, we would be very happy to receive your assistance. The QR code by Mr. Grizzly's Head brings you to our coffee page, where you will find our tip jar, also affectionately known as the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, where we work very hard to prevent dry beaver. We dedicate ourselves. No,
nothing.
It's a terrible affliction. It's a terrible affliction. So,
how would you know?
So
how
I've heard.
Would you know?
So I've heard. People talk. People talk. I listen. I have empathy.
Something. Watch the latest Bert Kreischer stand-up on Netflix. If you were easily offended, don't watch it. But I laughed uncontrollably for 60 minutes last night. Uncontrollably. It is hilarious.
So if you would like to help us in our quest to fight dry beaver, please make a donation to our coffee page. That's coffeeko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. Or if you'd like to bypass the PayPal CE Bros, send us a direct transfer to truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. That ensures that your transaction is 100% Canadian, and it also has the bonus of ensuring that your favorite grizzly and beaver get 100% of your donation, because nobody takes a cut.
Money goes straight into the account.
Exactly. So
No
thank you so much.
Done. Instant.
Yep. Exactly. No fuss, no muss. So thank you so much for all of your support in that way, because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs. How about following a couple of examples of some Canadians who have taken to writing the CBC Ombudsman yet again?
Yes.
Yeah, you might want to, very strongly suggesting and inferring that the prime minister is a liar when there's absolutely nothing out there, just based on the job he had in the past, might not meet journalistic standards. And you might want better
consideration,
because this is, you have to remember with the CBC, you're a shareholder. You own part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You pay for it. So you are entitled to write the ombudsman and ask for a performance review.
It is your asset.
Yes, it's your asset. Use it. Don't boycott it. Make it better. All right. Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom?
I've been rather blank lately, and I think it has to do with the fact that I've been fighting this uphill battle against depression, and I was too tired on Monday night to do an ASMR, so I'm going to, sorry, there's drilling here again. I might record something later today if I have a few moments when it's quiet. But I've been fighting an uphill battle. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I'll be discussing my mental health with him at great detail, and hopefully we can figure something out. I'm looking at alternative solutions in accordance with maybe probably increasing my medication. That being said, I'm doing much better this week than I was 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. It has been a steady climb back up that hill to get to the mountaintop once again. So, get out, get some exercise, get some fresh air if you have the energy to do so. When you're battling depression, you oftentimes don't have the energy to get out of bed, let alone bathe. I know what that's like. I'm forced to get up to do this show every day, which I'm grateful for. So I'm grateful for all the kids and cubs who encourage me. Having a dog in my life that needs to go out 3 times a day, sometimes 4, make sure that I get out and get some fresh air and exercise. So I understand if you're not in the position to do that right now. I can empathize because I've been there more times than I care to mention. Right now, I'm forcing myself to do things when I don't want to, because my body's telling me not to. But you know what? At the end of the day, I always feel better. So if you are battling depression, if you are battling the physical exhaustion portion of depression, try and get a little walk in, get some fresh air. Maybe just walk to a park bench, sit down for a few minutes, have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, whatever suits your fancy. Get some fresh air. Enjoy this springtime weather that we're getting, because it's not spring yet. I'm predicting spring on March 21st. That's the first day of spring.
Going out on a limb there, eh?
Yeah.
All right. Kids and cubs, it could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself, and come back for a really fun Easter egg. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.
I think everybody everybody will enjoy this as much as we will. Let me just switch it up here. I'm going to switch it up here so we can do this. So it'll be there. That works a little bit better, eh? This is from our friend, Cranky Canuck.
Yes.
Well, hey, everybody. It looks like the meth lab below us is burning the fuck down. Putin, Trump, Elon, and their minions are laying the groundwork right now to justify invading us.
Fuck you, buddy!
And don't let anyone bullshit you otherwise. Trump is trashing our border treaties, labeling them illegitimate, straight out of Putin's invasion handbook. They're purging the Pentagon, FBI, and other institutions of loyal officers and installing obedient stooges ready to follow Trump's every twisted illegal order. Meanwhile, Elon and his incel hacker dream team are recklessly dismantling critical federal agencies, compromising the United States digital infrastructure and national security. They mockingly call us their 51st state, smear Trudeau as some kind of tin pot dictator, and constantly lie about rigged elections. This textbook fascist propaganda is meant to justify an imperial-style invasion. NATO won't save us because NATO depends on the US, and that's exactly why invading Canada is part of a larger strategy to destroy the alliance. If the US attacks an ally, NATO crumbles, giving Putin a free pass to expand his war beyond Ukraine. This isn't just about Canada, it's about breaking the West. And who's gonna stop it? Congress? Spineless. Public opinion? Nope. Trump gives no fucks. His only goal now is avoiding an orange jumpsuit. He'll drown his cult in a tidal wave of propaganda, whipping them into a bloodthirsty frenzy while America's last shreds of global credibility burn to the ground. Fascists like Putin and Trump don't declare wars, they wage them. No permission, no warning, just gaslighting and destruction. Complacency is fascism's greatest weapon, but I'm heartened to see so many of us finally waking the fuck up. Trump isn't just trolling, these are real threats to our sovereignty. And if you think we could, or should, be America's 51st state, you can fuck right off with the rest of MAGA. Elbows up, Canada. Until next time, stay frosty.
Our friend Cranky Canuck knocking it out of the park once again. And to drive home a lot of what he just said is another clip of the comb-over president. Watch this.
Putin actually said to me, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as my enemy. He said that very strongly. But I had, with all of that, I had a very good relationship with Putin. I had a very good relationship with President Xi, a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Lots of good relationships. And that's a positive thing. That's not a negative thing. But at the same time, I'm about our country. So that's why we're talking about tariffs. We'll be taking in trillions of dollars.
I want to get to the tariffs in a minute because we're going to.
Very strongly. He said it to me very strongly. What the hell does that mean?
I know. There's one more thing I want people to see. Mr. Grizzly just sent you a link. You might have heard that the other day there was a huge protest in Greenland because there were protests in favor of the EU. Well, it turns out that there are other protests in other places going on, and there have been some in Belgrade, in Budapest, in Bucharest, in Moldova, in a whole bunch of places. This is some images from Serbia. If you look at all the people,
that's pretty big.
It's a massive
300,000
protest.
people.
Yes. Wow. There are protests in Hungary, Viktor Orban, Serbia, Mr. Vukic. All of these countries that might be somewhat friendly or friendly-ish. The people, the countries are tired of their illiberal democracies. There's also a lot of these protests going on in the United States, but for some reason the protest footage doesn't seem to be making the news.
I wonder why.
If you need to be heartened, as Canada's favorite collection of snowflakes has just told us, you might want to look. We have friends. We have lots of friends.
So
people like freedom.
Happened today. I don't know who sang that. So somebody said, who did that? Well, that guy actually is there every day, and he will play anything you ask him to if you pay him, apparently. He's there every day, that guy.
So
Yes.
this, for those who can't see, that was right in front of the lawn.
Directly in front of the White House, yes.
Yes. We have friends. All right. Have a beaver-fic day, everyone.
All right. I'll see you later.